All right, so y'all ready to dive in to some info? So I'm going to cover some market stats, talk about mortgage rates a little bit, and then we're going to jump into a exercise at the end. So this one will flow a little bit differently. But let's go ahead and jump in and look at our markets. There's, of course, all of you have received the graphics by now, but there's one thing I wanted to call out that I noticed across every single market, and that is that if you look here from October 1st to October 25th, 126 properties have sold. All of September, we only sold 132, right? So just to understand why is this happening, because normally that's not the case. We're not usually producing more in October than we are in September. What happened about a month ago? Interest rates dropped. So y'all started writing a bunch of contracts, right? Yeah, you nailed it, right? So, and this is across the board in every market, and we're gonna look at every market, but that's exactly what happened. So when we look at interest rates here in a second, you're gonna see that they continue to go up, right? We're gonna talk about that a little bit, but that's an indicator of what's gonna happen. And I want you to know this and start to correlate this, because how hard you worked a month ago might not get the same results today. Right? So we might have to increase our activities, increase our contacts, things along those lines. But let's go ahead and look at the rest of the markets real quick. Of course, we have the graphic on all of these, but I'm just going to move through those. In Elizabethtown, 418. All of September, we did 427. So we're going to pass that this week. Looking at Evansville, 2,266. They are, what's that, about 300 short. They did 2,600 all of September. Henderson, same thing, 22. They've already matched September. Well, we all know Henderson's a smaller market, a little different bird there. And then also looking at Louisville, 911. They're just about, was that 200 or 300 short? They'll probably most likely match August numbers as well. And I don't know why September's hidden, but September was actually lower. September, if I remember correctly, was right at 1,000. I don't know. I guess I accidentally hit that line. So the good news is all of you should have a decent amount of pendings. Things along those lines, and we're going to have to work even harder to maintain that through the end of the year. Does anybody know, and if you were on my coaching call yesterday, you know yesterday's number, how many working days are left this year? 18. Yep. So 18 days, not counting weekends. What I'm looking at is through basically November 21st. What that means is anything that you write a contract on after November 21st due to the holidays, pretty decent chance that it's not going to close until next year. So just know you have about 18 more days, not counting weekends, to go put things under contract and get paid this year. All right. So just wanted to make sure everybody knew that date as well. So let's talk mortgage rates. This is where they were at this time last week. You can see about 6.8 on the conventional, 6.25 on FHA and VA. And then this morning, I just pulled them this morning because they went up a little bit, 7% on the conventional, and right at, basically call it 6.5 on the FHA and the VA. So what's going on? Why are the rates continuing to rise? And one of the things that you'll see on here is, let me move this a little bit so everybody can see that easier. There we go. Yep. Which one? Oh, yeah. There we go. So mortgage rates are back at 7%. This is a significant number because it's psychological, right? So every single buyer that you've been working with that maybe hasn't locked in yet, they're going to call, let's say that you decide to write an offer, they're going to call their bank, and just 2 weeks ago they were looking at, say, a 6.75% interest rate. Now they're going to hear something that starts with a 7. That's going to freak them out. And I just want y'all to know that, like, it's a psychological barrier more than it is like, can we afford the home? Because the payment difference between a 6.75 or 6.875 and 7%, is a little bit of nothing. It can be $40 on a higher end, probably less on lower end. But one of the things you might want to do is get in front of that with your clients and just let them know. So reach out to them and say, hey, we've been looking at homes. I just saw that interest rates went to 7. There's really no good reason for them to be at 7 other than we're getting ready to hit an election. Literally, that's the only thing that I can come up with. There's no economic data that is leading towards this happening. basically. So let them know that, hey, we need to, I'll monitor them and make sure and let you know when they drop again. But B, I want you to understand the potential impact to your payment and see if we need to adjust price points. More than likely, they're not going to have to, but that would put them at ease, right? And not let them freak out, because they might hear 7% and think all of a sudden my payment's going to go up $200, and that would freak anybody out, right? So just food for thought on that. Basically, the reason that they're outside of the election, the reason that they're going up is, and I have this highlighted down the bottom right-hand corner, basically says long-term rates have been heading up because investors must consider the possibility that the 50% basis point rate cut that they did last month will heat up the economy too much. Because we really weren't in a bad economy at that moment. I mean, is stuff expensive? Yes, by all means. But the economy was still churning pretty good. And I guess they're worried that 50% cut is going to launch us into a better economy, which is going to drive rates up if that does happen. Also looking at the futures. So this is the future chart from both Fannie Mae and the Mortgage Bankers Association. The Mortgage Bankers Association is always more conservative. They have, through the end of 24, rates staying in the 6 range, but ultimately at some point, probably summer of 2025, dipping below 6. Fannie Mae's a little bit more aggressive, saying we're going to be at about 6.5 at the end of this year, and then dropping down to closer to 5.5, which is what we, or 5.6.
6.6.
Yeah, so 6% by the end of the year is what this lines up as. This actually just came out yesterday. I'll be honest, I don't know if we're going to get to 6 by the end of the year. I don't really see a way that happens. Could be completely wrong, and I hope to goodness I'm completely wrong, but I just don't see that happening. I will say, though, that the Fed is meeting. I believe they wrap up their meeting on November 7th. And there's a decent amount chance that, I believe it was like 30 to 35% chance that they reduce interest rates another quarter.
Before election?
Yeah, basically, it'd be right after the election. Literally, they'll announce it 2 days after the election. And who knows? Maybe they're waiting to see who wins before they don't decide that. My personal opinion, for what it's worth, I think they'll probably stay level. I think they're worried with the jobs reports and consumer price index and stuff like that, that they're worried that they'll heat the economy up a little bit too much, so they might hold steady and then take a look at reducing rates in December. But if we get that quarter of a point, remember last time I talked about how it was already priced in and we started to see that dip? Well, if we don't see a dip over the next week, because remember it's November 7th, so we're talking literally next week or the Monday after. If we don't see a dip in rates before that, if they do drop a quarter, this should go down a quarter of a point and get you back into the high 6s for your conventional loans. Okay, and I'll of course keep you updated on all of that. News and updates. There's not a ton of news, but I did include this because who in here's ever talked to a for sale by owner that knew how to do everything and then they were going to sell their house and they didn't need you for anything? Well, I just happened to come across this article last night, so I wanted to throw it in here. It's all about this Bob person, who I probably shouldn't say their last name since we're putting this on YouTube, but they wanted to sell their home on their own. And he does have a big home, 4,900 square feet. He originally listed it in 2019 for $459,000. He received an offer of $430,000, but was unwilling to negotiate. His price is now $861,000 and some change. But here's the thing: every single month, he raises the price by $3,600. And his quote on why he's doing that, I believe it's in here, and he says, I don't think I put it in here. He says, basically, I'm just waiting for the right buyer because somebody will pay this for that house. Anybody ever heard that before? So I just get the right buyer, this house is going to sell. Well, that's not always the case. And in this particular person's case, he's been on the market for 1,078 days, 17 days shy of 3 consecutive years, and has raised the price every single month by $3,600 ever since he first got on the market. Right? So does he have a chance of selling his house? Probably. Yeah, I mean, it's getting better, but probably not. So that led me to, and if you are part of our AL,
I don't understand.
Yeah.
It's probably worth 800 of it if it looks like that.
He's probably a divorce and he just hasn't had it listed here.
He's not motivated, right? Or yeah, you're probably right. He has to have it for sale for some sort of reason, but he's not motivated. He doesn't need the money, doesn't care, or it's just a really big joke and he thinks it's funny because he's got people writing articles about it now, right? But I think we can all say that it's safe to say that we all have listings that we're having trouble selling, right? So anybody have a seller that's maybe not willing to do a price reduction or says that, hey, I'm just waiting for the right buyer and things like that? So what I came across this recently, and we've kind of put it into play on my team a little bit, and then I presented it before, but I wanted to kind of go over this with you all because it's a really great way to frame what's going on in the market and to put you and the seller in the market all on the same page. And anytime you can take a complex issue and break it down into real simple drawings, then it makes it a whole lot easier. So what you're going to do is draw 3 circles on your chart here, or on your piece of paper. And I would say I wouldn't print this out and like include it in your listing presentation. I would literally flip over a piece of paper that on my listing and draw this out and let them understand it as you draw it. Now, before I get into this, and this is all about framework of why we need to price the home, whose responsibility is what, and things like that, a couple of quotes to lead this off. If your home isn't selling, your price isn't compelling. Let me say that again because it's the absolute truth. If your home isn't selling, the price isn't compelling. Yes, could you do some condition improvements? Yeah. Could you do a little bit different marketing? Absolutely. But ultimately, if you have it on the MLS, you're doing any type of effort in marketing at all, then the reason you're not getting offers is because it's overpriced based on the condition and location that it's in. The next thing is comps don't set the price, competition does. So I want you all to think, especially as we get into higher inventory markets, that it's all about launching the listing into the market, because you do one of two things. You either launch or you linger, and there is no in between. So we got to think about that from a marketing standpoint. Make sure you have all your ducks in a row, all your photos, whatever you do. If you do video tours, you already have the video. Everything's on the market, and you're launching it out to the market because you have the best chance of getting multiple offers in the first 7 days. And every day after 21 that your home hadn't sold and you don't do price reductions, there's less and less chance that you're ultimately going to sell it. And then I'm going to get into this graph, but I have one more thing for you. This is from Bobby, different Bobby, that I was listening to this podcast, and I just thought this was great. Here's how you set up at the listing appointment, this part. And it says, it is my job as your listing agent to expose your property to the largest pool of ready, willing, able, and interested buyers to mobilize the local real estate community and cause your home to sell. Now, I want you to hear the emphasis on cause, because do we sell homes? Unless you're an investor, you do not actually sell homes. What we do is market homes to potential buyers that causes the buyer to be interested enough to write an offer, right? And then from that point, we negotiate the deal. And then from that point, we make sure the deal closes. So that's ultimately what we're doing, right? Everybody agree with that? And then when you frame it in that sense, then it takes me versus you, Mr. and Miss Seller, to we're on the same page and we're fighting this market together. And a couple of things that you need to know about the market is, first of all, there's 3 parts to every sale of a home. Now, I said sale, not purchase. So this is only on the sale side. The first part, you would write this at the top of the first circle, is the market. So write market right at the very top. And then there are 3 factors from a market standpoint that causes or doesn't cause a home to sell. And some of these, by the way, most of these, actually all of these, are out of our control. Number 1 is the economy. The economy ultimately puts a ceiling on what the home is available for. What I mean by that is if the economy is going really good and people are making more money, they have more money to spend, they may be willing to spend more money on a house, right? Everybody agree with that? The second thing is, bullet point number 2, is interest rate. Interest rates directly affect buying power. You can afford significantly more home at 5% than you can at 7%. That's just a fact. And none of us have control of the interest rates, but it is part of the market. So we have to understand it and we have to know about it. And then the third one is the comps. So who in here pulls active listings when they go on a listing appointment and takes them with them? Right? So you probably want to start doing that. And here's the reason why. We normally always pull sold comps. Are sold comps present or past? Past, right? Unless you literally catch it day of, it's going to be past. So the active is your true competition. And what that means is I can comp things out and say I comp it out at 200,000, but then when I look on the market, every 200,000 home is either in a better location or in a significantly better condition than my home. If I put it on the market at 200,000, do I sell it? Most likely not, unless it's just the perfect home for the perfect buyer. Instead, I have to wait for these other 3 or 4 homes that are superior condition to sell, and then I get to sell mine, right? I'm fourth in line. So we need to start looking at active comps. The other thing in regards to comps is what happens if you put a house on the sale at 200,000, the neighbor, something happens and they have to sell, and they have to sell in 30 days. And they come and put the exact same house on the market at 185,000. Does that affect what your house is worth? Let's say they get it under contract at 185, cash deal, closes, quick close. That's a comp that an appraiser is going to look at. That affects the value of that home. And it could go the other way. If a home sold for 230, obviously it would go that other direction. But not only do we need to look at active comps, but we need to relook at them every single week and understand what's the competition that we're against and how do we position our listing at the top of that list. And does that mean we need to update condition? We need to update price? What do we need to update? Okay. Everybody with me so far on the market? All right. Job number 2 is the seller. So on this, we're going to write seller. And again, we're going to have 3 bullet points here. And the first thing that the seller is responsible for is the condition. It's very simply, Mr. and Ms. Seller, it's ultimately your house. I will always advise you on what are the best things to do, and you'll have a range of options. But ultimately, it's your house, and it's your money, and you get to decide how much you're willing to invest in this. And it could be as simple as, we're going to declutter, and I'm going to need you to take these personal items out, clean off the countertops, do all of this. It could be as far as, if you want to really maximize your return, then we need to do a full kitchen remodel. And then, but ultimately, it's up to them to decide what are they willing to put into the house. And the condition is ultimately their responsibility. The next thing that's ultimately their responsibility is the terms of the sale. So we'll write down terms. And same thing, Mr. and Ms. Seller, I'll always advise you, and I'm tapping on the market, because again, we're framing it to be back on the market. The reason the house didn't sell, it isn't my fault. It's the market's fault. It's because we're not all in alignment with the market, but the terms are going to dictate, you get to dictate the terms, meaning, are you willing to take a home that is, or offer that's contingent on a home selling? You know, are you willing to pay closing costs? Are you willing to pay a rate buy down? What are you willing to do? Are you willing to get possession after closing? All of those things with my advice, and I'll always advise you on what's going on in the market and what I recommend you should do, but ultimately you get to decide what terms you accept. And then finally, and this is different than anything you've heard me present before, but we're moving the price away from us to the seller. So ultimately, the price is the next thing that you're responsible for. Now, Mr. and Ms. Seller, again, I'm going to show you the comps. I'm going to show you the facts. I'm going to show you all the recently sold properties I can. I'm going to show you all the pending properties. I'm going to show you all the active properties. And together, we're going to interpret the market data combined with the condition, location of your home. And then we're going to come up with a price that works. And then pause script for a second. Who in here has ever gone on a listing appointment? Just say they said, oh, this house is worth 200,000, and another agent comes behind you and says 225, and they ultimately get the listing. Right? Well, this is another reason that you're moving the price to them. As long as you articulate in the right way, you can talk about this and say, hey, one of the things that I see is sometimes agents come in and buy listings. And what I mean by buying listings is we're going to look at all this data. We're going to go for the price, adjust for square footage, condition, all of that fun stuff. And we're going to establish that in today's market, your house needs to be X to be positioned in the top 2 or 3 in this price point. Do you understand how this works? Get them to say yes, right? You gotta make sure they understand what you're saying and say, well, I know you happen to be meeting with an agent later, and my biggest fear is that an agent might try to buy the listing. And what I mean by that is they're gonna come in maybe with some data, maybe not, and say that they can get you 225,000 out of the house. But understand this is a strategy that agents take because they don't know the market, they don't know how to pull comps, and they think they control the price, but we know you control the price, right, Mr. and Ms. Seller? And you get them to say yes and say, okay. So what I need you to know is when they say they can get 225, all they're really doing is trying to get the listing and put the sign yard, and then they're gonna beat you over the head for price reduction after price reduction after price reduction. Your house is gonna sit on the market for 60, 90, 120 days or more, and then you're ultimately gonna get less than what me and you are talking about right now because the home might become stigmatized, meaning people are wondering why it hadn't sold, and the whole time you're chasing the market, meaning you're asking for price reductions, but you're never catching up to the market. Does that make sense? At least that way, we call that dropping nails, by the way. That way, when the next agent comes in, they say, oh, Brad says, hey, I can get 225. Hopefully your seller looks at it and says, well, actually, Matt showed me some data, and I don't really see any way that I'm getting more than 200,000 out of this house, right? So now you've educated them because you made them understand that they're responsible for the price. Okay. Third one is agent. right? Agent over here. And then there's three things that the agent is responsible for. The first one is marketing. And this is probably our primary function, not probably, it is. It is 100%, it's on us to launch homes into the market. What I mean by that is, having a marketing plan. So like how many in here have a written out marketing plan to where you know what you're gonna do for at least the first 30 days on the market? Like written out. I know you know in your head, but does anybody have a plan? So if you walk into a listing appointment and you come to list my house and I say, hey, I understand marketing is your job. Show me what you're gonna do to market the house. You can talk about it. I know all of you can talk about it. But if you have an actual plan, well, first, Mr. and Ms. Seller, here's what we're gonna do. 3 days before market, we're gonna get professional photography. Then I'm gonna sit down and we're gonna write out a listing description together. I'm gonna send that over to you for your approval. We're gonna do X, Y, Z. First day, we're gonna do a broker, or first weekend, we're gonna do an open house. Second week, we're gonna do a broker open, blah, 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 all the way out through 90 days. You now proved that you've handled the marketing, right? And they don't have to trust you because it's on paper. They don't have to just trust that you're going to do what you're saying. You could actually give them this and say, follow along with me and create checklists. Now, we'll say this. Don't put it on there if you're not going to do it. Just throw that out there. But if you're willing to do all these things and you put all of those on there, now you've taken care of the marketing side of things, right? The next thing is negotiations. So who in here considers themselves a good negotiator? Show of hands. Only one of y'all are good negotiators. I would argue that every single one of you are a great negotiator when you're in a position of power. And let me explain. If you're new to the market, you've priced the market right, you've launched it into the market, and all of a sudden you get 3 offers, all y'all feel confident you can get them at least an ask price, if not an over asking offer in that situation, right? So you're a good negotiator. Now, let's say that you don't launch it into the market, you start overpriced, and now it's been on the market for 120 days, and you get one offer that's $15,000 under asking. What are the chances that you get? You probably need to, but what are the chances that you're going to get them at asking or above in that situation?
0.
Now you're a bad negotiator. When in actuality, it has nothing to do with your skills. It has to do with the position that you're in at that time. Does that make sense? So you got to be able to articulate that to your seller and say, hey, again, it's what's the code? Comps don't set the price, competition does. So if we're willing to start this price even $5,000 or $10,000 underneath comps, we have a better chance of achieving what you want or more, because we could potentially create a bidding war. Why do you think eBay was created? Right? And I've used that analogy before, and it makes sense to some people. And then the last one is deal life support. This is probably the most underrated thing that we do. I was just reading the Zillow actually just put out a study of like 10,000 people, and they recently just said that over 50% of the homes that were listed this year had a deal fall apart, which is a mind-blowing number. Now, granted, they probably only interviewed they only interviewed 11,000 people. Maybe they just happened to catch the 11,000 people that had a deal fall apart, or half of them, but still it's a staggering amount. So this is one of the biggest things, because it's one thing to, get an offer. It's a whole nother thing to get it accepted. It's a whole nother thing to get it to the closing table, right? We all know this. I mean, we've all dealt with those nightmares, and you heard Kevin talk about major deficiencies. So this is one of the most important things, because when I get a home inspection report, I'm going to be able to tell what's a major deficiency and what isn't, because of my knowledge and because of the knowledge of my brokerage. Remember, if you don't have the knowledge, we collectively as a whole do. And then I'm going to be able to make recommendations for you. Also, if we happen to get a low appraisal, I know how to supply comps to the appraiser, right? If the situation comes up and XYZ happens, then between me and my brokerage, I know how to handle it and be able to advise you on the best things to ultimately do, right? So you can see why this is so important. And honestly, what sellers need to recognize is these front 2 things really mostly have to do with price on if we're going to get it under contract. The deal life support mostly has to do with our ability as agents to overcome objections and obstacles and keep the deal going. Okay? One of the things that I want you to note is this little center spot is where all 3 circles align. The more, Mr. and Ms. Seller, that we can align with the market, me and you are on the same page, all of this comes together. I want you to think about this as the percentage chance that you have of your home selling, and the more in alignment we are, this center gets bigger and the better chance that we have to sell, Does that make sense? And then you get them to say yes to that, right? So now what you've done is you set the stage on everything. And then you all know the little triangle that I draw where we're price, we're marketing, and then we're condition up at the top. Well, now from that point forward, all you have to do is say, Mr. and Miss Seller, let me show you how much my marketing has attracted people. Here's the amount of views on Zillow, Homes.com, all the website portals. Here's how many views I had on the MLS. Here's how many views my video got, blah, 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 all that stuff. Let's look at our feedback from the showings we've had. Here's what people are saying about our condition of the home. We don't really have any negative feedback. Now, based on all the conversations that we've had, the market has unfortunately rejected our price. So, Mr. and Ms. Seller, what do you want to do from here? And I got two options for you. You can raise your price or lower your price. And then they're going to look at you and say, what do you mean I can raise my price? Well, this is part of it. It's kind of funny, but it's really true.
Be like this moron too.
Yeah. Let me show you what happens if you raise your price. No, but then all joking aside, like if it's a home that is outdated a little bit, well, Mr. Seller, if you want to come in and remodel your bathrooms, do your kitchen, that's probably going to cost you about $50,000 and take about 30 days. I can probably raise the price and get you more money, but it's going to take $50,000, $60,000 of your money in order to make that happen. Is that an option you want to explore? They're going to say no. Most of them are going to say no. If they say yes, awesome. You're getting a higher price listing. You're going to help advise them on that, and you're going to ultimately earn more commission for it. But they're going to say, oh, no, I can't do that. Well, then you see, based on our conversations, we really only have one choice, and that's to reduce the price. Does that make sense? And say, okay, great. Now we just need to decide what price do we need to be at in order to align these circles in order to get your home sold. And then that's the script that you use. Okay? So I want y'all to, but understand this all starts at the listing appointment. Because if we do this up front at the listing appointment, then from that point going forward, then we just reference back to this conversation, right? Any questions on that? No? Did y'all like that? You think it'll help you?
Very nice, thank you.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Let me raise my table back up.
No, she always lowers it.
Oh, there's Aller. Sorry, Aller, I just now saw that you were trying to get in. So that, I just wanted to go over this little graph, and I want y'all to start practicing this. Practice amongst yourselves, practice on your own, meet up with somebody, an accountability partner or something, and practice this, because I promise with the market that we're going into, this is gonna be much needed as inventory increases. Okay, because we're gonna have more competition, listings are gonna take around. Anybody in here been licensed since like 2012? I don't think anybody have. What year did you get licensed?
2015.
15. So you were right on the back end of inventory. So nobody in here has really been in a market that has 6 months of inventory or more. We're trending in that direction. I don't think we get there next year, but maybe the year after, we're probably gonna be there. This is the skill you need to stay ahead of the market, right here. All right, so that's everything that I have. There are no broker opens, but if you're in Owensboro, there's the chili cook-off for RPAC. My team is cooking chili. It's gonna be delicious. Rebecca's actually in here today, so she can help finish that stuff up. But that's gonna be at the Home Builders, right, Kevin?
Yeah.
So starts at 11, goes from 11 to 1. You can come by, socialize, have chili, make donations, donate to RPAC, which is a huge organization that allows us to stay legal, keeps us from being extra taxes, all kinds of good stuff. And then you can also win some prizes and some different stuff there.
It's
So
It's like $15, isn't it? It
Yeah.
costs money.
If it costs 15 to get in,
Yeah.
Tickets.
and then you get tickets to vote, and all of that money goes towards RPAC. So it's a
So
fundraiser.
vote for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
vote for us. Yeah, I don't even know the name of our team, but we're Sesame Street themed is all I know.
Chili dog.
All right, well, that wraps up what I got for this week, and we'll do it again next week. See y'all.
Thanks.
Thank you.